Hey, everybody.
Hello.
I'm glad to see you.
Nana.
Here, baby.
Yeah, I have company.
I know how that goes. I know.
He's supposed to be sleeping, whatever.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. No, forget it. So how is everybody?
I'm good. We're very relieved here in Minnesota that the Derek Chauvin trial is over.
I bet. I bet. What?
Super relieved.
Ugh, yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Has there been any trouble in your area?
Probably 20 minutes away, there was quite a bit of rioting for the last couple weeks, and then curfews that came in at either 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11 p.m. So we've been on lockdown curfew because of the rioting. So it's weighed more heavily than I thought it would.
Of course.
And then there just were such tears of relief when it was over, and justice, maybe. I think there will be some appeals, and that's it. It's not like everything is fixed, but it's nice to know that we're steps forward.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, it's been such an emotional trial, I think, for everybody. Like it's just, and with COVID adding to everything, like everybody's so hyper involved in everything that's going on.
Yeah. So that's Minnesota.
That's Minnesota. We're having a cold snap here, so I'm like all bundled up today, hiding. Got the heat cranked up. It's good. All right. Did anybody bring questions?
Well, Amy, I had a question that I posted to you earlier about my folate and B12 levels have been increasing, and my doctor is happy with the kind of slow, steady progress I'm making. But with that, the homocysteine has gone up. And that was opposite of what I thought was supposed to happen.
Right, right.
So I don't know if you have any insight about that.
I'm not sure about insights, but I have a theory.
Okay.
So sometimes, especially in the beginning with MTHFR, there is a backlog of stuff that's been needing to get done for years, if not decades, right? That hasn't happened. And so when you start getting those B vitamin levels up, sometimes your body gets a little bit overeager about the backlog, right? And so there's this huge burden of toxins that need to be dealt with and things that your body hasn't quite been able to get to, right? Genetic repair, all of these methylation processes that your body hasn't quite been able to manage over the years. And my theory would be that that's happening a little bit too fast, right? And a little bit too hard right now. And it's not so awful that you're in, dire straits symptom wise, but it's awful enough that your body is showing that like, okay, we need to raise the glutathione response, right? And raising your homocysteine is the only real method your body has to raise glutathione. It's not a very effective one, but it's one way, right? Because homocysteine is a precursor to glutathione. So even though it's like bad and inflammatory, it's also converted into something very important, right? Which is glutathione and also cellular energy. And so through the alpha ketobutyrate, right? So it has these two very important pathways that come down off of the homocysteine. And I think that, homocysteine does tend to elevate when your body's in a little bit higher need of that antioxidant kind of relief and that glutathione protection. So I would try adding in something like a heavy hitting antioxidant just to see if you can get that homocysteine to kind of creep back down. And part of it could be just time too, right? Like once your body kind of filters through some of this worst of the backlog phase, I'm guessing that that will normalize and come down, right? And so we'll see that increasing trend of like the B vitamins getting to a good place, but the homocysteine will also be responding. Because it's not ever linear, right? Like bodies are a little bit messy, and they do a lot of things at once. So we don't always have this clear, like this causes this. Yeah, no, sometimes it doesn't, right? It's not quite that precise because everything is such a web, right? It's not really a linear relationship. It's more of a web where, you know, there's 18 different influences on every level, and we have to figure out which string to pull. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what would be a antioxidant you would recommend?
So with antioxidants, I like to rotate through different ones. So, you know, like a good broad-based vitamin E, which with a bunch of different types of tocopherols and something like that is a great one to start with because it's fat soluble. So it reaches a lot of tissues that some antioxidants don't get to. And those are usually the tissues too, where we store toxins, right? Like we store toxins in our fatty tissues. And so antioxidants that can address that can really help. Melatonin is a great and often underlooked antioxidant because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And so that one is really, really lovely. Does have to be taken at night, obviously, because it's our sleep hormone as well. But that one is a lovely antioxidant. Any of the conventional, you know, like vitamin C, vitamin A, any good antioxidant blend. Some of the alternative antioxidants are great, like resveratrol or ECGC from green tea. I think it's less important about, you know, like getting this particular antioxidant than it is about getting antioxidants from a lot of different directions. You know, like this one crosses the blood-brain barrier, this one is fat soluble, this one, you know, might focus more on water soluble toxins, like just mix it all up. Oh, hi, sweet pea. My daughter is schooling from home, so we may have some interruption.
And when you say rotate, how often would you rotate?
I mean, I'm a pretty lazy kind of supplementer generally. So I tend to sort of grab the bottle closest if I have multiple bottles, and if I don't, then I just run out of one and switch to another. So
Okay.
with
Okay. So you don't have to do like a daily rotation. You can finish one bottle, switch to something else.
Yeah, let's be way easier than that. Let's be way easier than that.
So that's interesting what you say about the backlog, because I felt like extreme fatigue as this has been happening. So I also have thyroid issues. So I didn't know if it was a thyroid thing, but maybe it's just a detox.
It could be a detox thing. It's probably a detox thing. The other thing that could be happening is with that fatigue, as the B vitamins are ramping up, it's also putting a lot of demands on your cellular energy production, which is your Krebs cycle. And that is also fed directly from homocysteine. So your body might be trying to ramp up your cellular energy and just having a hard time of it, kind of getting a little stuck. So it could go either way. My guess would be it's a combination of kind of everything.
Would you recommend adding something like milk thistle, because isn't that like a precursor to glutathione, or doesn't that?
Milk thistle isn't. Milk thistle boosts your liver. Go on, please. Milk thistle boosts your liver and detox clearance that way.
Okay.
But it's and that milk thistle. So anything that pushes liver function can be kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because sometimes your body just isn't ready for that. Like it's another way of pushing detox where your body has the potential to get stuck.
Okay.
So I would go more for the antioxidant route. If you're looking for a better precursor to homocysteine, then N-acetylcysteine is the way to go. That one is a more direct precursor.
Okay. And at this point, would you, I've read that some physicians advocate using TMG or betaine to bring down.
Please don't. Please don't.
Okay.
So sorry, I just realized I misspoke. It's a precursor to glutathione, not homocysteine. You've got enough of the homocysteine. So N-acetylcysteine is a precursor to glutathione. But yeah, trimethylglycine and dimethylglycine for MTHFR folks is either incredibly well tolerated or really awful. And it goes one way or the other, and it's a very rapid response. So that's one of those that really can crash people pretty quickly. I would hold off on
because I've taken it in the past and not really noticed anything.
Okay, so if you took it with okay results, then
But it's hard to say because I've been feeling so crummy for so long. It's hard to tease out which
right?
which supplement or what's happening. So
Yeah, that's one that generally, like, if it's the wrong thing for you, it's crawling up the walls wrong. Like, it's awful.
okay.
So, but I honestly don't know what the benefit would be. Like, you're already working on the methylation cycle with the B vitamins, and that's pushing the same pathway as the DMG or TMG would. So
And that the TMG, that specific recommendation came from Dr. Dale Bredesen's protocol, that Alzheimer's protocol, that if people got stuck at a certain level, that I think it was 500 milligrams a day to add that in.
Yeah.
But you're saying that for MTHFR folks, that's probably not a good idea.
It's fraught with difficulty. It's just fraught with difficulty. Like, it's one of those supplements that some people respond very well to and others respond very badly. I am a particularly bad responder to that one.
Okay.
So I also am a little gun shy, right? Like, I have that personal, like, no, don't do it.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't, in this particular instance, I don't see where it would benefit you beyond the B vitamins that you're already taking, right? So,
okay.
So that wouldn't be the top of my list. I would focus on the antioxidant situation.
Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Anybody else bring a question?
Hey, Amy.
Hey.
Along the homocysteine line, I'm starting to look into taking SAMe.
Okay, great.
I read some caution that anybody with MTHR should not be taking SAMe because it can increase homocysteine.
So yes and no. Are you doing any of the food program that we're doing right now, like with stopping the
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So with the SAMe, that's totally fine, by the way. That's totally fine. With the SAMe, if you're following the food path, then it can be just a little bit too much. Simply because we're kind of pushing the same things with the methylfolate as we are with the SAMe. No, sweetie, you need to go to your work. Hold on just 1 second. I'm so sorry. Sweetie, please. No. Go on. Upstairs, please. Upstairs. It's not snowing anymore? Oh, that's what you were telling me. Okay.
The snow is melting.
Oh, that's good news.
It's gonna
Okay.
happen all the way.
Okay, thank you for telling me. Okay. Sorry. So as we're pushing this methylation cycle, the SAMe is basically methylated methionine, right? And so it's on its way to homocysteine, and we need to be able to continue to methyl, but it does give you that available methyl donor. So SAMe, the wonderful thing about it is it can give that methyl group to whatever needs it. So technically it does add a little bit of methionine to your system, which theoretically could create homocysteine, but it also adds that so valuable methyl group. And if your MTHFR is stuck, then you're not getting that methyl group any other way. Okay. Does that make sense? So to me, in this situation, the benefits outweigh the risks, unless you're just in a super high homocysteine category, and we need to monitor that very closely.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting on the labs to come back to see what my homocysteine is.
Okay.
When I had them done like 5 months ago, it was 8.2.
Oh no, that's great.
But that's when I was like taking multivitamins with folate, and I stopped all that stuff now. So like I'm not taking any folate stuff at the direction of the integrated medicine doctor I'm working with.
Right.
So we're trying to see where things are at, but he's probably getting ready to start SAMe and also L-methionine on top of it.
Oh,
seems duplicated. It sounds like Walsh is like one or the other. Like you kind of take L-methionine or SAMe, which is
right.
So I'd probably lean on the SAMe first, but I'm still waiting on clarification from them on that.
the MTHFR, I would definitely go SAMe first. The methionine has a lot more potential to boost the homocysteine because it's a direct precursor, right? The
Okay,
SAMe, like methionine is part of it, but it has that methyl group. And so it's not going to boost it so much. So yeah, I would maybe ask why
I
you're
am
following up on both of those, you know?
yeah. And I don't have my lab review. I'm just starting to get some info to start researching this while the labs are coming back and stuff. So
Okay.
all that will get cleared out hopefully in the next couple of weeks, but because I
Yeah.
gotta wait on my labs to come back. So
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, with a homocysteine where it was recently in the like 8 point something,
yeah.
you don't have to worry about that. That's not your primary concern, right? Because
Okay.
that is a really great number, you know, and that's optimal. And so even if if your homocysteine does increase a little bit, we've got a lot of wiggle room there. Right.
Okay.
So yeah. I think
Thank
that's-
you.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Anybody else bring a question?
Just on
I
that
had-
SAMe, I had tried that in the past and it created a lot of anxiety for me.
Yeah, it's another one that for MTHFR people react really well or really badly, you know, and but all of the MTHFR specific supplements are like that, you know, like so 5L methyl tetrahydrofolate, people either love it or it's the devil, right? Like it's awful. Same with SAMe, same with any of the methyl donors like the trimethylglycine or the dimethylglycine. It's just difficult, you know, because some of these can push the pathway just too fast, too hard, right? And pushing that pathway too hard feels miserable. It feels like anxiety. It feels like, you know, that hyper uncontrolled energy where you can't, you know, like drugged energy almost, you know? So yeah, all of the MTHFR specific supplements are just difficult, right? And they're picky. So yeah, Kevin, when you do start it, just be aware, right? And be very cautious about your body.
I went back through my list of orders and stuff, and I had bought it back in 14, a couple months, but I have no idea. I don't remember why I would have stopped it. So it could be one of those things where it worked for a while and stopped, which is typically my MO. It just, I take folate, it seems to work for a while, and then it just stops working, and that could have been one of the same things. So to be continued.
To be continued. Yeah, the stopping thing is really interesting. And I always like, to me, that's always like the roadblock. You know what I mean? Like it works. Oh no, it doesn't work. It works. Oh no, it doesn't work. Like, and you keep rotating through things.
Yep.
Yeah, that's always the like something is missing, but it's hard to narrow down what it is. It's another good place though to try antioxidants. Sometimes that's the thing that gets you over the hump. You know, and allows that thing that was helping and that thing that was working to actually activate again.
Taking 800 of vitamin E with the tocopherols in it.
Good. Okay.
So I don't know if that's enough or whatnot. That's what I'm currently on as a daily.
Okay. Just make sure that you rotate through them, you know, because
Okay.
the vitamin E will reach some tissues, but other, you know, water soluble antioxidants will reach different ones. So, yeah, I'm working on a whole chart of like what tissues antioxidants reach because it's actually really interesting, and very few of them cross into the brain. And there's this whole, the gamma tocopherol is one that does, and then melatonin does, but very few do. So you know, it's just, yeah, definitely get some variety in there because it's
Okay.
yeah. Who else? Anybody else have a question?
I do. I have a quick one, Amy. It might be related. Last week you mentioned that we should keep our protein on the lower end. Is that also because it increases homocysteine? Yeah. I guess I thought because I have the MTHFR gene, which is like the B12 deficiency, and I guess I assume that I need more. Is this just one of those things that it can't be too high, it can't be too low, or do I need to supplement?
It is. There's a sweet spot in there somewhere, and like with the MTHFR gene, being not a vegetarian is probably important for you, right? Like because your B12 is marginal and it's going to be marginal, right? And so you do need good sources of B12, but you don't need high homocysteine and you don't need the inflammation that comes with a higher meat diet. And so, so yes, it is that balancing act where you're getting meat protein, but not too much of it.
Can I ask one quick question, which is kind of unrelated? And I think someone from last week was a vegetarian talking about B12 supplements. I'm going to try and get to Mexico in the coming weeks. So I'm assuming that, you know, they don't have organic, and here I eat organic beef because we have our own cows. So I'm not going to be able to touch like leafy greens or any meat because I'm really low tox right now. So I think my naturopath thinks I have huge amounts of glyphosate.
Okay.
So I guess I'm going to have to start supplementing the B12, which I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
So is that like, if I'm not eating any meat and I have the MTHFR, like what would be an appropriate dose, do you think?
I mean, with B12s, I usually start around the 1,000 microgram mark, you know, like because it's usually, have you ever had any trouble tolerating B12?
I was put on liquid B12 the minute I did my oat test before I got the results.
Right.
And from that second until this point, I went insane. And I don't know which supplements I was on, NAC and SAMI and everything you're talking about. I've been on betaine.
Right.
She did a supplement soup, so I have no clue.
No idea.
I don't know which one it was, but yes, I did a whole bottle of liquid B12, methylated B12 from the start. And
I would recommend not starting with the methylated. It's the hardest to take, and it's going to produce the most reactions because of that methyl group, right? Like same problem as with the betaine or the TMG or the 5-LMTHF, right? Those methyl groups are the ones that mess us up. So I would start with like a hydroxy or an adenosyl. And usually those are incredibly well tolerated. Like they're a little bit slower to absorb and slower to act. So the issue with that methyl group is we don't need to convert it to anything. It comes in ready to go and basically like floods a system that's been really hungry for it. And when you flood that hungry system, the system goes like, I can do everything, right? Which then turns into a giant log jam because it's miserable trying to do everything at once, but your body's so excited about it, right? Like, you know, it's like all of a sudden there's this precious thing and we can do something. Yeah.
Okay, one more follow-up to that. While I'm waiting for my mycotoxin results, my new naturopath has put me on detox, like IV, like IV nutrient every week.
Right.
And it's just all B vitamins. And I said, are these methylated? Because I was terrified. And he's like, no, they're all the good ones. And the second week I had like 4 hours of like, I felt happy and normal, and then nothing ever again. So I've stopped them because it's like $200 a week.
Expensive, yeah.
Is that why then? Because I just had a big backlog of like detoxing?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing just seems to work. And I'm the same, I guess, as Kevin is like, I feel sometimes with probiotics, I'm like, this is the greatest invention on earth. And then after a month, it's nothing. Nothing helps.
Totally. Yeah, it's that honestly to me is usually that indication of like your body starts to get ahead, gets super excited that it's getting ahead, dumps a bunch more toxins, and then you fall back again, right? And so, yeah, to me, that's usually the like, take your antioxidants, slow it all down. You know, like I do not recommend trying to move fast with this sort of thing because that's what you end up doing. Like toxin dump, crash, toxin dump, crash, toxin dump, crash, right? Instead of if it's slower and steadier, I mean, it's definitely not as exciting, but at least we don't run into those giant like walls, right?
So would I then just cut that in half if that happens? Like drop it to 500 micrograms or what?
Yeah, for sure. Cut it in half or even a quarter, right? Like drop it way down. And I mean, just try to take care of the detox stuff in any way you can. But, you know, gentle detox strategies are gentle, right? Like they don't handle that big, huge dump very well. But for MTHFR folks, there isn't any great way to handle that big, huge dump unless you want to go to like a health retreat in India, eat nothing, be miserable for a month, and come out of it feeling like $1 million, right? Like those work, they're just crap to go through, right? Because it's not fun, you know?
I think I've basically been doing that for a year anyways here. So, I mean, and
Yeah.
it's just not helping. But yeah, that's why I asked, just in case like I'm there and I'm gonna need to supplements. I know that and haven't started yet. So
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Anybody else have a question?
I have a diet question.
Oh, tell me.
Hi, Asa. Involves him. He's a mutant too, guys. He can be here. So I've been curious about like considering foods that are heavy in heavy metals. So Asa, who is an MTHFR mutation, also has a GPX mutation, so it makes it harder for him to detox heavy metals. So things like rice and root vegetables that are high in heavy metals have been kind of limiting in his diet. But I don't know if that's in general something that MTHFR people should pay attention to or be concerned about, or how to balance that against like limiting wheat in our diet.
That's the hard part, right? The coming to some like real world practical balance, because arsenic is methylated, right? The only way we can get it from our system is to methylate it. And if rice is a high source of arsenic, then blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I don't have a great answer for this one. I think it's kind of the magic balancing act, right? Where, you know, if you're supporting your methylation and getting rice, we're probably okay, but yeah, how do we know, right? Like, how do you know what's the magic number, you know? And then also, what do you eat? Because you can't eat wheat. Like,
Right.
yeah, I'm with you, sister. I don't know. I got nothing. Potatoes, except they're root vegetables. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Okay.
It's hard. I do think it comes down to a balancing act. And I do want to be clear, I'm not anti-wheat, I'm anti-fortified wheat. I personally have a gluten sensitivity, so I can't do wheat, but like, if you can, do it, enjoy it, love it, eat all the foods I miss, right? Because there's so many of them. So yeah, it's just hard. So some people do okay with rye, like 100% rye. It's a very different flavor if you didn't grow up with it. And for some people, it's hard to adjust to.
It's hard to find too, actually.
It's also hard. Yeah, my parents, so my dad is Czech. He's from the Czech Republic. So rye is like a staple in our house. But my dad used to have to order like rye bread from a company called Dinkelmeyer, but he ordered so much they thought he was a retail outlet. So they'd show up like on his street with this big old like retail truck of rye bread and offload the boxes, and he'd put them in the deep freeze. Like, yeah, it's a little bit insane. Yeah, Dinkelmeyer makes good bread though, if you're looking for it. So yeah, it's crazy.
So follow-up question to that for him, since he's so young, like at what age should I start like testing his homocysteine levels, or like trying to sort of assess where he is with that level?
Yeah, wait until he's older. Honestly, I wouldn't start with that sort of thing until he's 10 or above, right? Because for the little
good. So just give me a ballpark about like when to start paying attention to that.
Yeah, for the little kiddos, you just don't want to get into the, like something might be wrong, No. Let's just work on the assumption of health, keep them mentally healthy and happy. If you start noticing red flags, you can, the great thing about kids is you have a lot more dietary control at that age. Yes. So you can start to adjust for some of those red flags without having to drag him through the medical craziness. So yeah, so at least that's my plan with Sabrina, right? Like, we're trying to do what we can at home. And if she starts to have any particular like, okay, this is starting to concern me, then adjustments at home.
Hi.
Hi, buddy. Hey, oh, big smiles.
He's such a ham.
Yeah, right. Look, it's ladies. I love that. So yeah, you can start to adjust at home to whatever degree, and then obviously if something is really medically concerning, then you involve the medical system. But yeah, if you can avoid it, I would.
Okay. Is there
Um,
any way to distinguish like heavy metal toxicity from other kinds of toxicity? Like, how would I know the difference? I'm guessing, or would
Not
I know the difference? Would it matter?
not very easy. It's not very easy.
Okay.
Toxicity usually looks like toxicity in whatever way that person shows
Right.
toxicity.
Totally.
So yeah, so it's really hard, and especially in kids, because kids have a lot of buffer room, so they don't usually show symptoms very of things like that, right? It's once we're broken down and old that we start really showing those symptoms.
Totally. His bucket's not full.
Right, exactly. You got plenty of room in that bucket. But yeah, it's balancing act. It's kind of Shannon Garcia is in the chat, and she just made a really good point about some people not being so sensitive to gluten. So if you can find things like, and more reactive to yeast. So if you can find things like the flatbread with not so much yeast, still maybe the gluten, the unenriched part is the hard part. So you'll have to look for like organic flatbreads or sprouted or something. Yeah, because why make anything easy? Forget it. Okay, so did that sort of answer that question? I know it's not a very satisfying answer, but.
I mean, it let me know that there isn't an easy answer, so that's okay. I just needed to hear that from somebody who can make more sense out of the landscape than I can.
Okay. Anybody else have a good question for a fun question or just a question? Any question?
Well, Amy, I have a question about some of the detox symptoms and my rheumatoid arthritis flares, and whether or not you have any kind of suggestions on how I determine whether or not I'm experiencing a detox kind of flare or it's an RA flare.
Yeah.
Because they look like fatigue and pain to me.
Yeah. So detox symptoms, we're going to get into this, not tonight in the lecture, but next week, I think. We'll get into this more because I've got a whole worksheet for you to go to about finding your detox symptoms. But detox symptoms, so if you think of, do you have any chemical sensitivities or anything like that? Like, do any chemicals bother you? No.
No.
Have you ever been hungover?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So think of hungover. That
Okay.
is like the basic picture of a detox symptom, right? You are toxic in that moment. Your body is trying desperately to get rid of it. And usually it feels like kind of nauseous, headachy, grumpy, maybe hungry, maybe the thought of food is kind of gross. Like it depends on the person. For you with RA, pain might be part of that picture, because pain is going to be, like anything that boosts inflammation even a little bit for you is probably going to lead to more pain.
Okay.
But I would expect there to be things that are a little bit more specific to detox as well, right? So not just pain and fatigue, but also irritability. Like for me, my first sign that something needs to shift is that I turn into a grumpy bear, right? Like I'm grumpy. Everything makes me annoyed, right? And whether or not I express that is a different thing, but like I can feel it internally, right? Like annoying, that's annoying, right? And so for me, that's my red flag of like, oh, what did I do? What did I get into? What have I done? Or what can I do to fix it, right? Before it turns into worse than annoyed.
Okay.
So we will definitely go through that in greater detail, but it really does help to have a clear picture of what your detox symptoms are. And that's part of why I love symptom trackers so much, because with the symptom tracker, you start to see these patterns, right? Like I have these repeating episodes where, I'm fatigued and brain fogged and grumpy and stuffy nose, right? Or whatever it is for you. And when you see these things showing up all in a lump, that's a really good sign that something's happening. Then we just have to figure out what that something is, right? So it's like those patterns. You start to kind of pick up on them and piece them together. Does that make sense?
It actually does, because I never have GI related symptoms with my RA flares, but I certainly have had migraine headaches. And so if I think about that migraine headache is probably a detox kind of flare.
Yeah. Migraines very often are, because our brains are so toxin sensitive.
Okay, that's helpful.
Good. Any other questions?
Can you expand on your gentle detox strategies, what you would recommend?
God, I love detoxing. Yeah, so anything that helps get toxins out in a way that doesn't involve like a whip to the liver, right? So anything that really pushes your liver has the potential to go either way for MTHFR, because we can get into that toxin dump scenario, which is the like spike and crash, right? We don't want that scenario. What we do want is things that encourage toxin release without as much liver involvement. So that's things that focus on lymph. So like lymphatic drainage massage, dry skin brushing, castor oil. I love castor oil. It's, I swear, the most important thing I have in my cupboard, right? Like castor oil is one of those things that gently over time really does boost detox without going through any of the symptoms, without going through any of the negatives. Epsom salts baths, right? Anything that makes you sweat, right? And so any of the saunas, heat lamps, any of those things really do boost detox. What else can I think of? I mean, drinking more water is kind of the obvious one, right? Like you use water to wash things, including the inside of your body. So, you know, more water, or water with good electrolytes, or, you know, like water with a little bit of lemon. It's a great detoxer. Things that encourage like stomach acid production, or liver flow, but without really pushing hard. So like apple cider vinegar is a great one. Sleep. But I should add that in there, because one of the nicest gentle detox strategies is just giving your body more time to sleep, you know, and more room around sleep. Because we need it, right? When we're detoxing, we need that sleep time. We need to shut down and let our body do stuff. That's all I can think of off the top of my head, but it's all of those sort of like gentle ways of encouraging your body to detox without like pushing that liver process.
And castor oil, are you meaning castor oil packs on the abdomen?
So again, this is where we run into Amy being lazy. There is a traditional castor oil pack that people do. I never have time for that. Like I just don't have time. Just sit around with 3 layers of flannel and the castor oil and the hot pad and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't happen in my life. So what I do, this is the lazy way to do castor oil. Put castor oil pretty much everywhere, right? Like front, back, all over the abdomen. For women, it can be very beneficial for breast tissue, like if you have any lymphatic congestion in your breasts, so dense tissue, fibrosity, any like nodes or lumpiness. Just slather it on everywhere. Put on a t-shirt that is now your sacrificial castor oil t-shirt. It's never coming back from this. And go to sleep like that, right? In bed, you're nice and warm and cozy. It heats it. It gives you, quite a number of hours, hopefully 8-ish, to absorb, to soak in, to really circulate in that lymphatic system. And then in the morning, you know, have your shower as usual. If there is any castor oil residue left, you just rinse it off and off you go. And your skin has the benefit of being like nice and happy and smooth now, which is lovely. So yeah, that's the lazy way to do castor oil packs. Honestly, after my pregnancy, like in the hormone washout period, I was literally head to toe in castor oil, just trying to get like out of that state in the old pajamas. My poor husband. I don't think he enjoyed that phase very much, but neither of us were sleeping, so we had bigger fish to fry. So yeah, I mean, I really love castor oil as a tool, and it doesn't have to be, you know, this severe regimented castor oil pack. It can be very loosey-goosey, right? Just get it on there, not to be taken internally. Just want to point that out. Castor oil, not to be taken internally. If you really want to encourage your body to have like crippling GI cramping, That's what you do. Castor oil, so there's this myth, this urban legend that castor oil internally was used as a interrogation and torture method by the Italian mafia, the early Italian mafia. So do not drink it, just apply topically. Love that. So yeah, but yeah, so castor oil is a great one. It's a lovely tool. It's a lovely tool, and any of that, you know, it does help to have heat sources to absorb it. But if you're in bed and all cozy, then that's enough heat. Oh, you know what? Actually, Stephanie, I want to, was it you who asked about liver? No, it was Patty. So Patty, you had said if we have, because we all have trouble detoxing, does that mean we have these bunk livers? Not at all, not at all. So for most of us, our livers are in great shape. They are doing everything they need to be doing. The toxins get stuck in different places, right? And so phase 1 of detox very much happens in the liver, right? For most of us, that part is doing just fine. It's phase 2 where we get stuck. And phase 2 is the place where we add methyl groups, we add glutathione. Those are the things that we don't have a lot of to spare. And so that's where we get stuck. And phase 2 happens in tissues all throughout the body. That's not just a liver process, that's like a whole body process. And so it can affect the liver, like you mentioned, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It can affect the liver because stuff gets stuck at phase 1 and then can't move forward. And that's the problem. So a lot of times the end products of phase 1 detox are far more toxic than the original products that went into your body. And so if you can't move it out of phase 1, that's where we get into a whole world of hurt, right? Because you've got all these hypertoxic creations basically from phase 1 that are just floating around doing damage. And we will talk about that again, I think not, maybe it's tonight? I can't remember. The week 3 lecture. So yeah, I think that is, maybe it's week 4. We'll see. We'll see. It's maybe tonight. But yeah, so it's not that your liver is bad. It's that your liver is accepting most of the fallout from phase 2 methylate or phase 2 detox being bad. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. But I guess my question is, my liver is just bad for another reason. Like my fat absorption.
Yeah. So your liver is bad. Right. Okay. Your particular liver is struggling because I do think you have a huge burden going through phase 1 that's getting stopped there, especially with the mycotoxins and that sort of thing. Like it all needs to be detoxed and it's all kind of getting stuck, right? And so then that backlashes on your liver because your liver is trying to store and process. So some of those fatty deposits in your liver, that is your body trying to nullify toxins, right? So the best tool that we have if we can't detox toxins is we shove them in our fat cells. And if you don't have a lot of fat cells in your body, then you create them in your liver, right? So you've got all this toxic burden, your body can't do anything with it. The only way to make it safer for your tissues is to shove it in fat.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's where that comes in. So for you, it's going to be a process of trying to slowly detox those fat cells. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm on a lot of stuff for fat digestion and protein digestion, or I was, and I'm on one thing now. But you know, of course, my GP says there's no drug and there's no supplements, which I'm like, well, I mean, alpha lipoic acid is supposed to like regenerate a diseased liver in 3 months. So of course he won't tell me that. So
and acetylcysteine is tremendous for disease.
Which I was on last month. And so my question was, should I bother? Like, I don't understand what happens when it hits 100% fat. Like, do I need a liver transplant? Like he won't answer any questions, right? So
Yeah. Choline, definitely. Have you looked into choline at all?
I've read about it in Ben Lynch's book. And again, hopefully tonight I'll talk to my naturopath and see if he thinks that's something.
Good. Yeah, it's one of the most effective treatments for non-alcoholic fatty liver disease where there's not an obvious causative factor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that question though. That's such a, because people view the liver like this giant filter, and it doesn't work like that at all, actually. So we're going to talk about it. Anybody else bring questions?
I have another question. So I'm just still trying to wrap my head around basic states.
Yes.
And I sort of don't understand how overmethylation can happen in a person with MTHFR. Can you break that down a little bit more? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. So remember that, like, we do have limited methyl donors, which is the confusing part, right? Like, we have limited methyl donors, but this is, I think, another way of your body trying to protect your genetics, right? And so instead of using those methyl donors in an equitable way around different body systems, your body's prioritizing the methylation of your genes, right? Because the overmethylation and undermethylation are specifically referring to the way you methylate your genes, right? Your genetic material. Yeah. So it's like in overmethylators, you've got limited resources and you're using them all in one place, right? And with undermethylators, you've got limited resources and you're spreading them out more. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, it's just the genes that are overmethylated, nothing else.
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Does anybody else have questions live? I've got a few from the chat as well.
So following up on your detox strategy about sleep, any suggestions to support that? Because one of my issues is like early morning waking and not being able to go back to sleep.
Do you take anything for sleep currently? No.
My doctor has kind of tweaked my progesterone. I take a natural progesterone and magnesium, and those were her recommendations for sleep. I had asked about melatonin, and she was really kind of reluctant about that. She felt like it was more about optimizing progesterone levels than adding in melatonin.
Definitely for women, progesterone really matters for sleep. It does encourage sleep. Like, that's why pregnant women get such great sleep, because, well, early in the pregnancy usually, because their progesterone is skyrocketing. Later in the pregnancy, all bets are off. But yeah, progesterone's wonderful for sleep. So that is a great call. And the magnesium is a great call. When you're waking up early in the morning, do you feel refreshed? No. Are you waking up anxious?
No.
Just awake and not refreshed.
Right. And often it takes me a long time to go back to sleep, or I'll have multiple wakings, like hourly, from 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of thing.
Yeah. Can you tell what it is that wakes you?
No, but like one of the first posts that I did was this new doctor had me do a sleep study, and I had a home one, and I was borderline sleep apnea, and I don't have any of the like classic symptoms. So they wanted me to do an in-lab follow-up study. So I don't know if that's it. The sleep doctor said when you wake up, if you're having an apneic event, it's like a fight or flight response. And so she thought that's why I wasn't falling back to sleep. It was like this whammo.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then someone else in the chat had said that when their adrenals were out of whack, that was causing apnea for them. Another one posted that her thyroid issues were connected with her sleep apnea. So I don't know.
Yeah. For sure, thyroid and adrenals are hyperconnected with sleep, no matter what, right? So both of those have to be functioning well. Usually with adrenal sleep issues, I expect that little bit more of like an anxious waking, you know what I mean? Like, you wake up and you're kind of raring to go, even though it's the middle of the night, and then it takes a while to like ramp back down. Melatonin, I love melatonin for sleep, but in this, it's more helpful in terms of falling to sleep than it is in terms of staying asleep. If you are waking up at 3 and have a good amount of time before you have to wake up in the morning, you could try a tiny dose of melatonin at that time, just to get you back to sleep more quickly and hopefully into a deeper sleep state. But melatonin, when you take it close to waking up, for some people gives them like a sleep hangover where they just wake up groggy and still want to be asleep, right? But it's something to try, and it is really great antioxidant too. Like melatonin has so many benefits. I feel like it's kind of the underused miracle thing, but so that, yeah, that could be something to try. You could experiment with things that'll lower cortisol levels overnight. Like there's what is it called? So Integrative Therapeutics makes a great product called Cortisol Manager. That's a magnolia extract that's really, really lovely to bring that nighttime cortisol down. It's wonderful. And for a lot of people, it keeps them asleep. The trouble with it is that if your cortisol is marginal during the day, like if your body has a little bit of adrenal fatigue, then it makes you like lower energy during the day because you just don't have enough, right? Like you're just dealing with a little bit lower cortisol. That just typed a really great comment too. The sleep issue, look up mouth taping to be sure you're breathing through your nose at night. That's a really, really great point. And mouth taping is really incredible for some people. It's a kind of an odd thing, but yeah, it works. It works really well. Yeah, so.
Yes, I used to wake all the time, like between 3 and 5. I was awake, and I thought that
So
was
what is
normal.
the mouth taping? You tried it?
It's like a postage stamp size tape across, medical grade tape across your mouth, and you can breathe through the sides, and I can talk through the sides. But James Nestor wrote a book called Breathe and strongly recommends mouth taping, and the advantages nitric oxide is made in your nose. And I'm high histamine, so I was just certain there's no way that I could ever breathe through my nose all night long. But my husband actually started it about 3 weeks before I did, and he said, yeah, it's easy, it's just fine. But I wouldn't go a night without mouth taping now.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh,
Yeah.
fascinating. I'll have to look into that.
I know, and it's such like a great life hack, right? Like, and a little piece of tape, yay!
Well, it's just weird because I just was certain there's no way I'm going to leave that on. My subconscious is going to say, what?
Right.
Take it off.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's super weird, but effective, right? And Shannon Garcia said her mom does mouth taping. Makes a big difference for her. So that's great, right? And it's such a simple, like, I love things where you don't have to take something, right? Like you can just fix it.
Yeah, and just a little tiny postage stamp size. Like, don't go your whole mouth, and make sure you can breathe out the sides, and it should break free readily. It's just more of a reminder, I think, to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And breathe through the nose that we are given.
Right. No, I love that. It's a really good call. All right, let me see if I can get to, we did get a question in the chat. Is there a list of genetic tests I recommend? So I have a love-hate relationship with testing SNPs. I mean, I'm a geek and I love information. So for the geekery side of thing, I love knowing this stuff, right? But sometimes for the real life side of things, it can make people hyper-focused on, like, these are my problems and I need to fix them all, rather than how do I get to the root of this and do simple things that'll help everything. You know what I mean? And so they end up with like, this is my 5 supplements that I take for this SNP, and this is my 5 supplements that I take for this SNP, and here's the 3 for this one. And it turns into just a mess, right? Like a big chaotic supplement mess. So with the SNPs, use information very cautiously, but the ones that clinically I see, I mean, MTHFR to me is the root, right? Like that one is the root, and it really, really matters to balance methylation. If you get stuck, then testing MTR and MTRR can be really helpful, because that, you know, if there's a big problem in the way you process B12, then that matters, right? COMT is good to know. it's difficult to address, but good to know. VDR, I think that one matters quite a bit. Simply because, you know, for VDR folks, they need a much higher resting level of vitamin D globally, right, through their whole body to get it into the brain. And so that matters in terms of target vitamin D levels and that sort of thing. What else? I would say for me, those ones are the most important to test. Now, again, I'm a geek, so I've, you know, like anything that can be tested, I've tested in myself just because I like to know. But that's more just curiosity, right? Like I definitely will not address every damn SNP because holy crap, that would be a ton of supplements and it would turn ridiculous, right? Like it would turn into just me eating supplements from morning till night. Because oh my god, I've got a lot of SNPs. So yeah, let's not do that. But yeah, those I would say are my big go-to ones. I might be forgetting one. You know what? I'll sit down at some point and do an actual post about this as well, like a podcast episode and a blog post, because this is sort of off the top of my head. But I feel like I'm forgetting something. So yeah. Lisa asked a very pertinent question. She said she's doing a training during office hours, but I have a question if you have the time. If we're over-methylated due to supplements, how long does that take to go away? That very much depends on the person, Lisa. And it's, I mean, in an ideal world, 3 days. In a not so ideal world, I've seen it last 3 months, right? And so, you know, it really does depend on the person. But then you said something else that sort of caught me off guard. So background, if it helps. I've had massive waves of fatigue once every couple of months. They last about 4 days. Although it could be a host of things, maybe my body isn't loving the 5L-methyl tetrahydrofolate. I've been on 400 micrograms since January. I did have waves of fatigue before that. So if you're concerned that you are over supplementing, then I would say stop taking it and see how you feel and see how you react, right? Don't keep taking it and worry about over supplementation, because if there's a possibility, then stop, right? Give your body a break, give your body a rest, see if things calm down. But outside of that, yeah, it really can take quite a long time for that to actually come out of your system, because again, your body gets into that state where like, oh my God, I can dump stuff, yay. And then it dumps everything and you get into a bad place. So yeah, it can take a while, but definitely if you're concerned you're over supplementing, first step, stop supplementing. Guys, it's noon already. That went super fast. And I have a client scheduled, so I've got to sign off, but thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate this so much. And I love the conversation that happens and the questions that come. So thanks, guys. It's awesome.
We'll see you this evening.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there with bells on. Probably
Thank
not.
you.
Okay. Bye, guys. See you tonight.